performer, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm a peak performance coach and stress management trainer. And today I want to explore the question with you, where do thoughts come from? You might have wondered the same question because we do tend to think a lot of thoughts over the course of a day and over the course of a year. And sometimes we might get really frustrated with that, right? Because we might tend to overthink or overanalyze the situation, or we might be thinking negative thoughts, or we might tend to do a lot of negative self-talk. And so we might not be very happy about the fact that we are thinking a lot of thoughts. And you might have been wondering, where do these thoughts just come from? So this is a question that I want to answer for you today. But before we are jumping in, I want to make sure to say that if you are watching one of my videos for the very first time, I'm really excited to have you. And I would really appreciate it if you would head over to my YouTube channel in order to check out all of the content that I have been producing for you over the last year and a half. You can find over 180 videos on peak performance tools, stress management tools, personal development tools in order to help you remain or become a peak performer, because peak performance is something that you can learn, and it is something that I want you to learn in a more sustainable way, because sometimes we have learned to be a peak performer and exploit our resources, but we haven't really learned to be a sustainable peak performer. So how to prevent burnout and how to prevent mental and physical diseases, because we tend to overwork and we tend to be super stressed and maybe also overthink. All right. So if you are interested in these topics, I would really appreciate it if you head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the little notifications bell. I'm releasing new content every Monday and every Friday. And if you're hitting that little notification bell that's right next to the subscribe button, you will get a little notification in your YouTube account every Monday and every Friday. Okay? So that's just to be said in order to make sure that you're completely up to date before we're jumping into today's topic. Where do thoughts come from? Okay, so let's dive deeper into that question. First of all, I want to share with you how I got to think about this question. Where do thoughts come from? I'm actually doing a cognitive behavioral practitioner certification right now. This is a really difficult word. Cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner certification. And the trainer, Kane Ramsey, asked this question. He said, I do not really know where thoughts come from. So if anybody has any idea about where do thoughts come from, reach out to me and let me know, because I have no idea and nobody has really ever figured it out. And I partly agree with him that it is kind of hard to identify and understand where thoughts come from. But on the other hand, I also think I might have some answers to this question, and I might be able to help you today understand where thoughts actually come from. I truly believe that thoughts are coming from things that are unresolved within your heart, because I am a total overthinker as well, and I have been analyzing and I have been observing my thoughts for many years. And I do believe that this has actually helped me understand better where my thoughts are coming from, and it has helped me to also regulate that, right? So you are not alone. This is the first important message, right? You are not alone. There's a lot of people out there that are thinking a lot of thoughts every single day. In fact, we are thinking between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of these thoughts are repetitive and 7 out of 10 thoughts are negative. And it's really interesting because there are 5 core feelings that we are feeling, and those core feelings are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, and shame, which is also really interesting to just give you a little hint here, because we are having one core feeling that is positive and all of the other 4 are kind of negative, right? So this kind of shows you as well that every time a thought is coming up, it is connected to an emotion. So emotions and thoughts are really closely connected. I'm actually talking about this in my last video. Check out the reality loop video that I'm connecting here in my video. But it's really interesting to really understand how emotions and thoughts are connected. So that's the first thing that I want to tell you, right? So it's very normal that you're thinking a lot of thoughts. Everybody does. The question is, where do they really come from? And what is really interesting is that when you are starting to observe your thoughts, you might get some insights into what is actually going on in your life, because you might be overthinking, or you might even tend to negative self-talk, which is, by the way, another really interesting topic that I have just recently talked about in one of my videos. So make sure to check that one out as well. And when you are thinking all of these thoughts, then it is really important to really observe and analyze them. So where do thoughts come from? Again, I'm going to ask you this question again. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit more insight on where do thoughts actually come from. When you're starting to observe and when you're starting to analyze what kind of thoughts are actually coming up, there might be a really good indication of what you are currently thinking about, what is important to you. Because here's another thing. Stress can be produced by thought alone. So the stress reaction that you have in your body is triggered by thought alone. And I'm going to give you a really simple example. When you are receiving a letter from the IRS and you just see the stamp on the letterhead, you will already start to have a lot of different thoughts, and that might already create a lot of stress within you, because maybe you're expecting something not so positive. And usually we tend to think more negative things than we tend to think positive things, right? So thoughts can produce stress, so that can really kind of amp us up and can activate the so-called sympathetic nervous system. So it is really, really important that you are aware of your thoughts in order to make sure that you are regulating your stress response and that you are starting to understand yourself better. Self-awareness is super, super important. So when you are thinking thoughts, it is really important to understand, okay, what are these thoughts, right? We need to understand and create awareness around these thoughts. And then, are these thoughts positive? Are these thoughts negative? Mostly, in most cases, they are probably more negative than positive. And so it is really interesting to kind of look at that. Because I have been doing that, as I just mentioned to you, I have been analyzing my thoughts for many years because I have plenty of thoughts on my own mind. And by understanding my own thoughts, I have learned that thoughts come from things that are unresolved in my heart, which means are things that I'm not so happy with, right? That maybe I'm thinking about a situation that didn't make me very happy, where I felt triggered, where I felt like I could have done better, but I didn't. Or I am afraid that somebody else is judging me. So these thoughts are all indications into how do I think about myself actually as well, right? Can you see that? So first of all, we have to create awareness around why these thoughts are there and what are these thoughts in the first place, right? Because only when I know what kind of thoughts I'm thinking, can I dive deeper into understanding these thoughts and maybe resolving these thoughts as well. And that brings me to the next topic that's really interesting to explore when talking about where do thoughts come from? Because once you have understood what your thoughts are and maybe why they are coming up, can you start resolving them? And there are two different ways on how to do that. I think, first of all, we are all having limiting beliefs. We are all having these limiting beliefs that are coming usually from our past and that we have learned maybe in a hard way in our life, and that are so ingrained within us that every time we are experiencing even just a slightly similar situation, we are kind of drawing our experience back into that current situation, and we are like, oh, this is just the same thing that is happening to me again, right? So really important to understand your limiting beliefs. And then at the same time, when you are understanding thoughts, it is also really important to understand your values, because maybe you're having a lot of thoughts at the moment because you don't live in alignment with your values, with what is important to you. Let me give you an example. If you are working, for example, in a job where a lot of things are demanded of you, and you have to maybe stay longer and you have to work overtime in order to get everything done that's on your plate, and or at the same time your family is super important to you. Maybe you have a partner, maybe you have kids, and you would like to spend quality time with them, but it is impossible because you are working so much at the moment. And then there is kind of this conflict, right? And this conflict can create thoughts. It can create negative thoughts, unhappy thoughts, and it can raise your stress levels. Because as I just told you before, stress is produced and generated by thoughts alone. So if you are thinking a lot of thoughts, if you are stuck in thinking more and more thoughts because there is a really strong connection between thoughts and emotions, then it can get really tricky. So just to mention here again, make sure that you're checking out the video on the reality loop, because that will really explain to you how emotions and thoughts are connected and what kind of chemical processes are even taking place when thoughts and emotions are kind of within us, right? So really important. And if you are tending to think really negatively about yourself, and if you have a lot of negative self-talk, make sure that you're checking out that video as well, because they will all help you to really understand the question, where do thoughts come from and what can I do in order to improve that, right? And one of the most powerful tools that I have learned to use in my own life in order to understand where do thoughts come from, what are my thoughts, and how can I resolve them, is journaling. This is a really simple practice, and I'm sure that you have maybe heard even a lot of other people talk about this before, but journaling has really helped me to know what I'm thinking, to structure my thoughts, and to also resolve my thoughts. Because the more we understand if these thoughts are coming up again and again and again, can we start diving deeper into understanding, okay, how can I resolve these thoughts that are coming up on a regular basis and why might they be there? It's really interesting, honestly. So take a look at your thoughts, because I do believe that your thoughts are there for a reason. Your thoughts are there because there is something in your life at the moment that you're maybe not in agreement with. That is not the way you want things to go. And it's not to say that once you are happy in your life, you do not have any thoughts anymore. But hopefully, once you are creating a life that you are enjoying, will you have more positive thoughts, or the thoughts are just kind of there in order to optimize your life, right? So this is really important. Journal. Start to just buy yourself a beautiful journal and write down the thoughts that are coming up, or the thoughts that you're having on a day-to-day basis, in order to start that self-awareness process of understanding, oh, I'm actually thinking this like maybe 5 out of 7 days. I'm thinking still about this situation. And maybe this is a really good indication that I need to start doing something about this, right? Because this is another really important thing, getting into action, because you can't just think thoughts and you can't just analyze thoughts. That will be already a really big chunk of getting better. But then it's also, of course, about getting into action. So in order to shift your perspective, in order to stop that overthinking process, it is really important that you also shift. So shift your perspective, practice mental flexibility. And there's a couple of different tools that I am talking more about in my podcast episode, How to Stop Overthinking. So I highly encourage you to listen to that one as well, or to watch it, because you can also find it on my YouTube channel. So there's a lot of different resources, as you can see. But to finalize and to summarize, where do thoughts come from? I truly believe that thoughts come from things that are unresolved in your heart. They are an indication that maybe things in your life are not going the way that you want them to go, especially when you're overthinking certain things. And there are definitely ways on how you can manage your thoughts, and how you can reduce negative self-talk, how you can stop overthinking, and how you can move into a more empowered life. Okay? But make sure that you're paying attention to these thoughts, because they are there for a reason, and they are there because maybe your values are currently not in alignment with what you are living. So this is super interesting, a super interesting question, and I hope that it has turned your thoughts in your head right now, because maybe now you're thinking about what you can do in order to improve that situation in your life, and that's exactly what I wanted you to get to. So thank you so much for watching this video today. I really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts or questions, make sure to leave me a comment down below. I'm always really, really happy to see interaction with you guys. If you enjoyed this video, if you think this was really helpful, give me a thumbs up. This is really helpful for me to know as well, because then I know that I'm producing more of these kind of topics and content for you. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you today. So take care. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.